All right, we are back in open session. At this time, is there any public comment?
Hello, everybody. My name is Michelle Udelson, in case you didn't recognize my eyes with the mask. And I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you to everyone, our superintendent, our board members, everyone, administration, for responding so quickly to the concerns we had at Hauser and increasing the in-person time and opportunities. I hope that that rapid call to action will continue for all of our K through 5 students. I know I sent a letter to the board a week or two ago, and I, along with many others, feel that 2.5 hours of instructional time for K through 5 students in our district just simply isn't sufficient. The 2.5 hours of in-person time includes settling in, hearing announcements, saying the pledge, mask breaks when weather is good, water breaks, and the additional time it takes at the end of the day during cold weather to gear up to go home. As a mom of 4, I understand that what I think should take about 2 to 3 minutes to get us out the door takes a lot longer than that. So in reality, I think the educational time our students get is probably closer to 2 hours a day. In addition, as I stated in my letter to the board, hybrid students experience only 4 days a week of 30 minutes of Zoom time when they're not in-person learning. These specials include art, music, PE, and library. Our experience with this at Ames has been very mixed. Sometimes those 30-minute Zoom classes and sessions are lively, engaging, motivating. Other times, some of these specials do not meet for 2 to 4 weeks at a time. During those virtual non-meeting times, students often complete assignments which might include an app, a repetitive game, or to continue to work on the same simple assignment from the previous week or weeks. Often it feels like busy work to fill the time rather than an educational experience. At the very least, I believe that all of our K through 5 students deserve the same amount of time and instruction that Hauser students have been receiving since the beginning of the school year, which comes out to approximately 4.5 hours a day or 10 hours additional time per week. Whether Hauser students were in person or hybrid or fully remote, they have been provided with real-time teaching more than ELA and math. While I understand that perhaps the format for middle school students might be different, the time for which they have access to teaching, not busy work or apps, should be equal and fair and consistent. Believe me, I understand that adjusting the schedule for K through 5 students is not easy. Logistically, it's a challenge. I'm sure many of you would say a nightmare. I would agree with you. Most of us probably have all of these thoughts and ideas, but really don't understand how much of an undertaking it is. However, I do believe that we can do better for our students. Someone told me that if you're going to kind of complain or express discontent with something, it's helpful to have some options or solutions. So while some of these might be great, I fully recognize a lot of them are probably horrible ideas or unattainable, but I felt like you should know that I'm willing to put my thinking cap on and help come up with solutions. Perhaps imitating what other similar districts are doing successfully with a similar structure to ours would be helpful. Perhaps daily attendance of an extended day like Hauser and other districts are doing, like an 8:30 to 1 or an 8:30 to noon. Depending on what the science is currently showing, while social distancing is important, there's some question about whether the 6 feet rule is still necessary. We know that mask wearing is. I know in the beginning of the school year, a lot of people said they didn't think students, especially young ones, could maintain wearing a mask all day. And I think our kids have risen to the occasion. Depending on how many students have opted for full remote, perhaps adding a few remote students via Zoom to each in-person class would help. This would allow for use of another classroom in each grade and would free up an additional teacher at each grade level also. I would imagine some numbers, however, range from grade to grade, class to class, for how many students are full remote. Use of the library, music room, art room as temporary classrooms might be helpful. Use of the stage, the gym, the lunchrooms, the multi-purpose rooms as temporary classrooms, since they are either full remote or not in use, could be used. Renting trailers, I know not ideal, but I also know that none of this is really ideal. If more in person is not possible, though I don't believe that's the case. But assuming the worst, I believe in-person portion of the day should be extended to allow for some more math and ELA time, and the hybrid portion of the day should be extended to include social studies, science, and writing. We as parents don't want more busy work or app assignments, but instruction and teacher and student interactions. Perhaps hiring long-term substitutes who were teachers and have a passion for teaching, or new grads who weren't able to find a job because of the pandemic would be able to work 3 to 5 hours a day, whether Zoom or in person. Again, I don't have a perfect solution. I know you don't either. And I sincerely want to thank all of you, the teachers, the administrators, everyone. I know this isn't easy for anybody, but I really, really think that Riverside District 96 can do better and should do better. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Kathy, has there been any additional comment come in?
Just the three that you have in your folder.
Okay, I do have 3 emails in front of me here. The first one is from Maureen Wunderlich. My apologies if I got that pronunciation wrong. It reads, "Hi, I wanted to congratulate D96 on all the efforts on keeping our kids in school. We appreciate all that you have done for our kids. I hope we can move forward with adding more days in the classroom. The kids need in-person learning. Keep up the good work and stay warm. Thanks, Maureen Wunderlich." All right, the second one is from Carrie Zalewiski. "I'm writing to request that the school board take action to bring D96 students back into school full-time starting March 1st, 2021. The CDC has indicated, recognizing the importance of in-person learning, that it is important and appropriate to get kids back into schools as soon as possible. Evidence suggests that distance learning has disastrous social and emotional consequences for students. According to a statement released by the American Academy of Pediatrics, children learn best when physically present in the classroom, but children get much more than academics at school. They also learn social and emotional skills at school, get exercise, mental health support, and other services that cannot be easily replicated online. We know more about controlling the virus than we did in the fall, namely that masks, social distancing, hand washing work. Plus, our positivity rate is moving below the 5% mark. Add to this that teachers are now eligible to receive the vaccine and that we are doing rapid testing. The choice is clear. I am grateful that there was partial in-person learning offered. However, 2 hours per day with a month fully remote in December and other remote learning days sprinkled in is not sufficient time in the classroom. The D96 kids need to get back into the classroom full-time ASAP. And it mentions a New York Times article with recent data about opening schools that was attached to the original email. Thanks for considering, Carrie Zalewiski. And last one I have is from Tom and Gretchen Lupfer. Good evening. I would like to thank the board and superintendent, as well as the administrators, teachers at Hauser, for making the move to increase in-person learning time at Hauser Middle School. Thank you for listening. While this is a step in the right direction, I do hope to see us continue on this path and return to 5 full days in person as soon as possible. I would also like to raise a few more questions related to this topic. Number 1, why will Hauser have remote learning on Wednesdays? I would imagine necessary cleaning can be done after the children leave the building at 1 p.m. 2, what metrics need to be met in order for us to see a return to full days? While we are seeing the middle school students head back to more hours in person, I too would like to see the same at the elementary level. It is my understanding that a survey will be going out to determine how the community would feel about this possibility. When should we expect to see this survey? And if the results show that the community wants their children back in school for more time each day, when would that be implemented? Has the district been successful in finding partners with any local organizations to help our teachers get vaccinated? Riverside Brookfield High School partnered with Pillars. Perhaps D96 could look into doing the same. This has been a challenging year for all, to say the least. I understand the work that you are all doing requires much thought. It is my opinion that the needs of our children should be our top priority. The hard work done to get the hybrid model up and running has set the stage for us to continue evolving as the metrics allow us to. I believe that we can bring our children, K through 8, back into school full-time in a safe manner. Many other districts are doing it, even without saliva testing. So can we. Thank you for your time, Gretchen Lupfer. All right. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, are changes to the agenda. At this time, are there any proposed board member changes to the agenda?
Nope.
Okay. And that brings us to the superintendent's report.
All right. Thanks, Dan. I have a couple different informational items to share. I know the board has been carefully tracking the saliva screening participation numbers, so I have that shared. And again, our tech team continues to work on different ways to show this data. So please take a look at that. I will also share that this week has been a very confusing week with President's Day and then our all remote day. So we are saliva screening children in grades 4 and 5 as recommended by District 102, as well as our Hauser Thursday, Friday group. Are there any questions about the saliva screening participation?
I guess I have a question, and it's more of an, I don't know if you have the answer, but the participation still seems to be pretty low. I was expecting it to be a little bit higher. I was wondering, do we have any idea why it's sort of stagnating? I'd say not stagnating, but like just sort of not moving.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's one single reason. As you know, I visited several of the PTA and PTO meetings to talk and get parent feedback. We've talked about it at parent leadership team. Again, just trying to get that parent feedback as well as staff feedback about it. I know if people have had COVID in the past 3 months, they are not supposed to participate. I don't think that's what makes up for the fall off in numbers here. But there are people that just don't think that it's appropriate matter of the school district to be collecting saliva. There's other people that perhaps just find it organizationally challenging to take part in. So again, it's a great question. I wish there was one single answer and we could do more to just respond to that. But the numbers have really we've not seen a significant increase now recently. At first, we kind of saw a nice jump up and then it's more or less kind of leveled off.
I guess the question, and then it's just my next question. I understand any test is better than no test, but I guess if we have such a low participation rate, even though we have a number of people consenting to it, I mean, how effective is this then? I mean, if we're only getting just over 50% participating.
Yeah, I think we feel it's a helpful mitigation measure. I mean, we know we were open for in-person even before we had the saliva screening. We've talked about this. I know that our staff feels safer. I think they are safer. We are eliminating some COVID cases. Now, we've had several weeks of no positive saliva cases coming through. That probably is a reflection of what's going on in the community in terms of the overall metrics. So whether or not people just don't see it as valuable, we'll keep pushing it out there and encouraging people to participate.
I think that one area that I think David alluded to is this discrepancy between the people who sort of signed up for it, who are and sort of in principle apparently okay with doing the test, and the set of people who actually come in with their samples. There's a big discrepancy between those two. And so I wonder if that's just like people are, they forget or they're, whatever. So maybe if there were a concerted effort to like really not harass people, but really like remind them clearly on a regular basis, hey, tomorrow this saliva sample's due for you, this set of people, this set of aims or whatever, you bring your saliva sample in tomorrow. So people don't, because it's easy to forget, obviously. So that could be a way to help.
I think it is, if people do forget it. Our principals are sending an email. I don't know if it's going out the night before or the morning of, but each school you should be getting a reminder from your child's school saying, today's your day or tomorrow's your day. So, but again, I don't know that that's changed our numbers significantly.
I can tell you, usually get both. Tomorrow this is happening, hey, this morning bring it in. I think that was my same observation. We seem to have a decent consenting rate, but the participation rate is almost 20 points lower, so that's interesting, I guess.
I wonder if there's a fair chunk of those that sign the consent to participate, then maybe read the details of like, oh, if you've been diagnosed with COVID in the
Right.
past 3 months, you shouldn't. So I'm curious if there's a percentage of that, or if it is just, it's one more thing to add to your list of things to do, and it just gets,
I'm sure that's part of it. It's definitely been a challenge for my wife and I some mornings. At the same time, though, I do wonder how much is a reflection of the numbers are going down. Is it perhaps a sense of urgency is leaving somewhat?
If the numbers are going down, but they're still quite a bit higher, I think, than back in April of last year or
Summer.
I
September,
definitely
October,
agree.
people are freaking out. So it's like, yeah, it's true they're going down, but like, it's only
Yeah.
a comparison to the recent past when they were very, very high.
And I don't know, I don't have actual data to support this, even though LaGrange would say, please keep participating even if you are vaccinated. This would be more to staff members. We simply don't know, sort of when it would no longer be needed. But I do wonder if there's staff that are saying, well, I have a vaccine now, maybe I don't need to do this. But we'll keep exploring that and keep encouraging. And, Wesley, to your comment, I know there's daily reminders, maybe twice daily reminders, or the evening and the morning. So we'll keep looking at those options too. I also wanted to share information about the trimester enrollment changes. So as you know, we send a survey out to our families at the trimester shift time. So that's coming up on March 8th. Asking families who are remote if they want to come back to hybrid, and certainly hybrid families can go to remote, although we've shared with families all along that if they're hybrid and want to shift to remote because they're no longer comfortable being in school, that's always been an option to families. It's interesting to look at the data. Not a really significant shift here at trimester 3. We were anticipating that maybe with spring on the horizon, the positivity metrics looking better, that more children would decide to come back. We're still at about a 70-30 split at elementary. It's a little bit more of a 75-25 now at Hauser. But wanted to share that with all of you. And again, thanks to the technology department for setting up much more detailed data there for you to take a look at. The other thing I wanted, go ahead.
This has already come back. This is what the plan is executing, right?
Right, so we had families just had to tell us by,
Yeah.
I forget the exact date, but they have told us, and this is the anticipated information that we will implement at the trimester change, which is March 8th.
I think just sort of related, unrelated, I think this is one of the most interesting pieces of the puzzle, I think, too, about all of the other dialogue going around. How will this change if so these decisions were made based on status quo. So if we change status quo, how do these numbers, are more people going to want to come back? Are less people going to want to come back? Is it the same because people swap out? I think, so just as I was looking at this, that was just one thought that ran through my head is, okay, if we change X, Y, and Z, does that end up causing a bigger issue, less of an issue? It's a hard thing to project, I think, so.
Absolutely, and we have had some families now respond to us and say, I didn't know Hauser was going to be 4 days a week, and could I change my mind? So much of this is very numbers driven, as you know, enrollment and social distancing and the number of seats in a classroom. And I do want to just share some comments about increased instructional time. As I had shared a communication with the district last Friday. As you know, there have been a good number of communications coming into us from parents, mostly supporting a desire for increased instructional time. I will tell you, I've had families respond and say, please tell me you're not doing the remote academy. Does this mean that we won't have a remote option anymore? The remote option is very important to us and to our family. We've also had a number of families say, this is working, thank you, and don't mess with it, for lack of a better way to put it right now. But I do just want to share, because I've been sharing with some individual parents, and I think it's always important to share some of those same ideas with everyone. I think the board is aware, but as you all know, our plan was really built around a health and safety protocol. It was about mask wearing, it was about 6-foot social distancing, and then we said we wanted to prioritize in-person instruction for those core instructional areas, and we really wanted to prioritize the teacher-student relationship, that we really felt that it's in that context that learning happens most successfully. So all of those things were things that we were studying very carefully over the course of the summer months, as you recall. Came up with our plan that we implemented on September 2nd. As you know, we were very, very proud of being able to open at a time when many other school districts were not able to open. I do realize that now what at elementary is 2.5 hours of instruction. For many families, I know doesn't feel like enough. I will tell you that back in the summer, we knew that our plan needed to pivot to remote, right? That our anticipation, our prediction was that it would be likely that we would have to go remote at some point in time. You know, maybe what we didn't fully anticipate is that there would be an opportunity to come back with COVID much improved, the COVID scenario much improved, and add more time. So I know the board is fully aware, but for the community to understand, and I think they do, is that particularly at the elementary level, our teachers teach a full morning with children. They take what we call our planning time and lunchtime in the middle of the day, and then they have a full afternoon with another group of students. We had set a maximum of 15 enrollment. That was based on a 6-foot social distancing measurement that we had done. We do have classes that are lower than 15. We have a good number that are lower than 15, maybe in the 11, 12 range. And we have looked at whether or not we could add AMs and PMs, and what we come up with is numbers that are, certainly greater than 15 and would be problematic around social distancing. But let me just say a few other things. As you know, Hauser did just make an announcement that we're going to modify the instructional time there. As you know, Hauser was built around a different schedule. It was interesting, and I continue to thank families for being so patient and so flexible, is that we made different structural arrangements for elementary and middle school. And we kind of thought, wow, I'm surprised families are okay with that, and that you could have an early learner, an elementary student, and a middle school student, and potentially be on 3 different schedules. And families really were amenable to that and have done a great job working with us. What Hauser has sort of since realized is that they actually had some classes that were getting very low in enrollment. That one of the phenomenons we've heard about, and I think it was happening at Hauser, but we've heard about this in other districts as well, and particularly in high schools, is that for students to say, I could Zoom into the classroom, and I can go in person, or I could just be at home and do this, I think I won't go today. That we wanted that dual platform, but it became almost a disincentive to maybe show up in person. So with that, we really wanted to make sure that kids were participating, that kids were having those opportunities to be in groups. We know that that's part of the motivation for children, is to come to school and see other children, not just their teacher. We'd also set up a good number of co-teaching arrangements at Hauser. Because we were doing the dual platform, that was a nice way to set it up, especially as teachers were learning some of those technologies and how to do that. And so really through a lot of creative planning and problem solving, with particularly kudos to April May and Chris Harbalis, who did a lot of this. They have modified some of the co-teaching. They've looked at some of the classroom arrangements, using the auditorium, using the music rooms, using some of the non-traditional learning spaces, the library, to create more settings for children, to modify some of the co-teaching, and therefore offer a 4-day-a-week schedule. 4 days a week, still going from that 8:30 to 1 o'clock time. So it's wonderful. We're really, really pleased about that. We really hope that, particularly for the middle school kids, there's going to be more incentive and more motivation to come to school. That program still follows 6-foot social distancing, and really did preserve the teacher-student relationship. So again, those core principles, we just were able to do it at Hauser in a way that, never say never. It's certainly not impossible, but we all have taken a lot of close look examination. That's our, myself, our cabinet and district office team, as well as our principals, really examining schedules and seeing, is there something that we could modify to bring in children more. We're going to continue to look at some options. We are talking to other districts. There are a good number of districts in our area that put together exactly the plan that we put together, this AM-PM split. It's probably the hardest one to undo, real honestly, because of the teacher-student setups, because of the class size tightness that's there. I know a lot of people, we were very expectant about the CDC guidance that came out. The CDC guidance, if you kind of wade into it with a lot of detail, which I've done over the past couple days, it actually still puts Riverside in a red zone. It actually still requires social distancing of 6 feet. Now, the CDC is an organization that guides us. They do not mandate to us. They are not really our oversight body. Our oversight body is really the Illinois State Board of Education. However, we know we don't want to take lightly the guidance from the CDC right now. So we were really hoping that they might come out and say, we've looked carefully at the science, and we think that children can be closer together, because that's kind of the lever that we need to make some modifications to our school day. I am very hopeful about next year that, perhaps by then either the guidance changes, the metrics change, COVID changes enough, people are vaccinated. I don't think children will be vaccinated by the fall, but anyway, we're again hoping for that. We are looking at some options. Could we even extend the day for children that need it through intervention, extend the day through after-school activities, maybe invite kids in for some of their asynchronous or their specials when the weather gets nicer and do some things outdoors. So again, a lot of creative problem solving, no clear ideas exactly on how to do it. I know for families that are saying, please, children need this, there are also families that are saying this is working. So we're taking a close look at that. I did mention a survey. After the CDC guidance came out, I have my own mixed feelings about the survey. So I need to continue to work with our administrative team and consider that. Certainly interested in hearing if you have thoughts about that. I do know some neighboring school districts that did a survey. Some have not had overwhelming, compelling response of please, let's do this. It certainly would help us understand that. It's just that it's challenging to ask a question that perhaps we can't solve for. So,
Martha, really quickly, the CDC report just came out Friday, right? Was
right.
that
12, right?
Yeah, so
Friday
it's a-
afternoon, because I sent a communication Friday morning and I referenced it
Right.
sort of, yeah.
So we're talking about the CDC guidance from a few days ago, not the one that was months ago.
Correct.
Just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
I was clear on that.
Are you aware of, are there a lot of school districts in our area that at the elementary level have relaxed the 6-foot guidelines? I'm just curious if that's something that's happening a lot or not.
Right. There are some. And I don't want to speak for other school districts. I know Elmhurst made a pretty clear announcement that they were going to just make that modification. That was the way they were going to get children into school more. There are other districts that I think out of necessity to get kids in at all, made those arrangements even perhaps even a while ago. I think this is what's challenging, and perhaps this is what your question's getting to, is they're still not seeing in-school transmission in terms of what I understand. So, but it is hard when guiding bodies are saying something different. It's a commitment we made to our parents that we would have children socially distanced, and it's a commitment we made to our staff at the beginning of all this.
Well, you make mention that the CDC requires the 6 foot of distance in orange and red communities like most of America. But you also referenced us before the meeting to the forensic guidance that noted while the regulations say it's required, I guess when asked on it, the CDC kind of backtracked a little bit and noted that it was a guideline and a recommendation, not a requirement.
Right, so CDC, their very title is it's CDC guidance. CDC guides us with public health information. They don't mandate to us. It is interesting that they chose to use the word required. So again, where the state of Illinois is that Governor Pritzker indicated that decisions would be local decisions, right? And that CDC is a guiding document. Illinois Department of Public Health has guiding documents, and Illinois State Board of Education have guiding documents. Illinois State Board of Education says 6 feet when feasible.
But I think it'll be interesting to keep seeing how the CDC evolves now with more of it coming out too. Just from some folks I've talked to kind of in that part of the health industry have said that it was up for discussion. It just didn't make it in this time. And so there seems to be some positive thinking around like we're just not ready for that guidance yet. And by the time, there's a lot to get through in our own district. And maybe by the time we put some of those puzzle pieces together, that might be another thing that we could take a look at too, which probably actually won't make it easier, might probably make it harder at that point, but it'll be interesting to see how that continues to evolve over the next couple months.
I know you had mentioned a survey possibility. I know you can't do a survey saying, would you be interested in this, and not being able to then implement, but it would be, I think it could be helpful to see where people are at. Like, if that guidance changes, are you,
Yeah.
I
think
think,
It's also just a moment in time though, so 2 months from now, we'd probably have to do it again, but I completely agree with
Right,
you.
I think it would be great to just find out this moment in time. You hear from a select group of parents.
Right.
We don't really know what the pulse of the entire community is. I don't think it's a harmful thing to get the pulse of the community. I know it's just a snapshot, but I think that could help inform where we're going. I mean, if we get something where it's like 80% of the people are like, no, we're good, I don't want to move forward, then maybe, then maybe that kind of, leads you in one way. If you get it the other way, it leads you the other way. I still think it could be helpful as long as the survey's not saying, tell me what you like and we're going to implement. I mean, but I do think it's...
Questions, would you be comfortable sending your child to school with less than 6 feet of social distancing? Sort of describe your comfort level if it meant that there would be a teacher change for your child. Is that kind of a deal breaker, so to speak? And that is nothing we take, neither one are things we take lightly. Let me just be really clear about that, yeah.
That's why I think gathering more data about that could be very helpful, because if it's overwhelmingly one way or the other, that informs, the time spent in those areas. I mean, I think it's good information to gather myself, but.
You might even just ask a yes/no question, and then would you accept a teacher change? Yes, no, which is very clear, and then tell me about that type thing for.
I mean, it takes very little time for people who want to fill out that survey, and then it could be very informative for you.
Yeah.
As long as there's no promise to, but.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Because my battery pack is on red. I think it's dead. I might need Don to give me a different pack. But
I think you're still, I can
thank you. It's giving me a red. I just want to make sure. I know the CDC guidance talked about cohorting and podding in order to reduce transmission. So I do have some concerns about blending, let's say morning and afternoon. You are now creating a new pod where these children don't necessarily, maybe they have exposures with some of these children, but it is something to consider how you're blending and creating new cohorts. So that I don't take that lightly personally.
I think that's a good point there, is that podding idea is really crucial, I think.
We could possibly use the saliva testing to help make that a safer transition in the future if that were to happen.
And I don't disagree with you, but those pods are not holding today outside of school.
Yeah, I agree.
Not necessarily, but it is certainly the CDC guidance, and I if you're going to pack in 30, 25 kids, it's a definite difference than if you have the 15. So it is just something to consider.
It's also your new pod, so.
But
that's what I was going to say. You're moving to one new pod that's changing. We could possibly use some of the surveillance testing to increase, the safety of that move if it's possible.
But those are concerns.
If there's participating, I'm just saying it's something to consider. It was mentioned in CDC guidance. It talks about it being, cohorting is recommended to minimize exposure. It's not perfect, but something. It's not just that, in my opinion. It's also about relationships that have been formed in these cohorts, and it's going to be March, not too soon. So I do wonder about how we blend educationally for the staff and the relationships with these small groups of kids that will impact their instruction. And for better or for worse, we don't know. So
Right, here we are in February, and the teacher knows the students really well. Students know the students in their class. They know their teacher. It's not just about knowing and having that, caring relationship. It really is about understanding their instructional needs in many, many ways. And so to do a change like that at this time of year, again, is something that really gives us great pause. So I hear you.
Personally, I'm more concerned about the teacher change for all of that. Like, you're going to have a different teacher the last 3 months of the year. I'm personally less concerned about taking AM and PM for that same reason. I mean, because those kids still know that teacher. It's just putting kids together. And quite honestly, at the elementary school level, I mean, I think all the kids depending on how long you've been in the school, you probably know all the kids in the other class. So at least I know my kids do. I mean, if they went to any other class in this school, they would know almost every kid in that other class. So, but the teacher thing is definitely something I'd personally take into consideration.
There were some school districts too, just to mention, I know people have asked about other school districts that are extending time. So 4 hours seems to be something not unusual to hear about an elementary schedule. A lot of those schedules were built around teachers kind of having extended planning time or doing their remote academy in their other half of the day or something. So there was some extension of time that they could offer without extending necessarily group sizes. So again, our schedule we put together was really tight. It was what we liked about it. Again, as we envisioned, it was more like how do we pivot to all remote, and then now pivoting back to full time. And I don't know that people are necessarily saying full time, and we do know districts that are doing that. So again, all very much under consideration. I really appreciate the feedback from the board. I wanted to just share a couple other things. We have our kindergarten registration night coming up. I have that announcement in here, and my board book just shut down, but I think that's March 4th, right? That's
Yes.
going to be a virtual event. It'll be all on Zoom webinar. It actually gives us, we always talk about the pandemic silver linings, it actually gives us an opportunity to offer it also in both English and in Spanish and to pre-record some things. So that is one of the things that is coming up here quickly, and it's so important for families to register. We want parents to have information about kindergarten, but also an incentive to register so that we can begin to predict and anticipate enrollment numbers for the coming school year. Also just wanted to share, Pam Shaw is here. I want to thank her, and Sherry participated also on our behavior intervention committee. That's an annual requirement to look at behavior intervention and supports for children with special needs and to make sure that our work is in keeping with our policies and our agreement. So thanks to Pam and thanks to Sherry for being part of that. And again, there's an update for you here in the superintendent's report. The other thing I wanted to mention, it's not quite as exciting as some of the other things going on, but it was a big deal. We had our 5-year compliance review. That's when our Regional Office of Education comes in and looks at everything from policies to student records, personnel records, fire safety. Are we running our tornado drills? Are we doing all the things that we are required to do? I want to thank Kathy Perino for doing a lot of that and uploading a lot of policy information, et cetera. And also Angela Dozel and Pam Shaw were key parts in putting all of that together. So again, that went very, very well. We had great feedback that we passed with flying colors. So in the midst of a pandemic year, we're like, really, we're going to do that too? But we did, and all went well. So thanks to the team that put that together. And that's it for my superintendent's report, Dan.
Okay. Thanks, Martha. All right. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Could the board secretary read tonight's consent agenda?
Tonight's consent agenda contains the meetings from the previous minutes of January 6th, 2021 closed session, the minutes of the January 6th, 2021 regular business meeting, the January 20th minutes of the closed session, and minutes of the regular meeting, as well as the personnel report as presented, the payables pre-list as of January 29th, 2021, payables pre-list as of February 17th, 2021, and the 2020-2021 employee wellness screening.
All right. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Kathy, can you call the roll?
Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mrs. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Markle?
Aye.
Mrs. Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the Riverside Education Council.
They didn't share with me that they had any comment, but Pam or Angela, is Jen Ullman out there? She was going to maybe come to the meeting? Okay, thanks. And I guess no other comments.
No? Okay. Then next up is board member comments. Anything from board members today?
No,
Okay.
actually, if I can just say one thing, sort of backing off of something Jeff said earlier. I mean, I know we got a lot of comments about opening the school up, some saying full-time, 5 days a week. But we also received a lot of comments, and what Martha said of like saying, the remote option is working. I just want to sort of basically stress that I know my children are in the full remote option, and I can tell you firsthand experience that they don't feel any different than any of the remotes. Actually, the hybrids. They actually feel, in some cases, actually better about it, and not from a health perspective. So I just wanted to sort of say that I'm really appreciative of that that remote option. I know my kids are. When asked, like we asked them this past quarter if they wanted to go back, and they don't want to go back. They want to stay remote. They like the remote option, and it's not because my junior high kid decides to wake up like right beforehand and go to school. So I just wanted to say I think we're doing a really good job with the remote option.
Dave, appreciate you sharing that. Anyone else? All right. Next, we'll move on to committee reports. First up is the Education Committee.
Yeah, there was a kind of a variety of topics, but Ms. Dolzel did, pretty extensive. It's a busy time of year. It talks about spring assessments and what's going to be happening. It talks about summer school, the 5 essential survey that we're seeing, and also what Martha alluded to earlier, the trimester change and any changes for families. So really right now, it's just about still how do we best serve each student, and I'm really proud of Angela and the work she does for our teachers, but all of these things are available if anyone wants to look at the presentation. So that's it.
All right. Thanks, Sharon. All right. David, next up is Policy Committee.
Well, I don't have anything, but I thought Kathy was actually playing a joke on me and sending me policy 107, but I guess that wasn't a joke, and so we are going to have more policies coming soon.
See the trick?
We will await that in the meeting at a future date. All right, then next up, Joel, is the Facilities Committee.
Facilities doesn't have anything specific, but there will be discussions in old business from Ramesh of Vistara and Martha said also DLA, the architect.
All right. Then next is Joel and Wes, the Personnel Committee.
Nothing specific to discuss tonight now.
Okay. And last is Jeff with the Finance Committee.
Nothing at this time.
All right. It's a fast run through committees tonight. The next item on the agenda is old business. First item is the Capital Improvement Program.
Jim and Ramesh, is Ryan Kelly also joining us on, or should be on? Okay.
Got it. Can you hear me? Great. So the first item in the agenda was the central utility change order. There's a detailed memo that's included in the board agenda workbook. And I tried to put as much detail into the work that was done over the last 4.5, 5 months. If you recall, the project started off as a simple relocation of a sanitary line, which was part of the base contract that Berglund had bid as part of the GMP. But then we had to make a modification to avoid one of the 3 major trees that happened to be present at that location where the tie-in was going to take place. When we moved the initial line over, once again, if you're familiar with what I had mentioned 3 months ago, the village of Riverside has a say in sanitary lines, so does MWRD. So we had to make modifications, we had to resubmit for a permit for any modifications that we had made at that stage. This was based on information that we had at that time. So at that time, we decided to relocate the sanitary line and move it between the 2 trees and make a tie-in directly. At that time, the village stepped in and said, we believe that those lines are corrupt in the sense that they're combined lines which have sanitary and storm. And they said that if you do any work in that, you need to separate the 2 lines. They have to be a separate sanitary line and a separate storm line. So we said, okay, we'll do that process. So it looked like we were just going to cleave one of the pipes and make it into 2. When we started to work on that part of it, we noticed that there was more and more complications kept coming up. There were additional items that had to be separated. The village required us to do some, MWRD required us to do some, and the project quickly multiplied into not just 1 pipe, but we're looking at about 7 or 8 pipes. 5 new structures were installed, catch basins were installed. And in each time the installation was proceeding, we found even more structures that had been illegally connected over the past years. We have no history as to when this was done, how this was done, but there were other sanitary lines that were being combined with storm lines. None of this information seemed to be present in any of the surveys, of the existing surveys or surveys that were done by the architect's crew. So I've detailed out the whole process, the step-by-step schedule of construction, how a project that was about 3 to 4 weeks initially became about 8 weeks, and then spread out all the way through December. By the time we reached December, we finished off all the separations, all the tie-ins, but because of inclement weather, we could not finish what's the site work like landscaping and the reinstallation of the playground structure that's there. So that work was separated out, and as you can see in the memo, that work will be completed in spring as soon as the weather allows us to do that. And so there are 3 components in that change order. First is Berglund's change order for the work. I worked that number down. It initially started at initially it was $300,000 for the base contract portion of the work. It escalated to almost $600,000, and then we managed to bring it back down into $359,000 and change that you see out there. There was a major rework that we did because we felt that we were owed credits in the base contract, so we used that to bring the number down. Second part of it is the work that's shown for spring. That is, we have to redo all the landscaping in that area. There are 3 major areas that are done. That's why the fence is still up out there, because the village of Riverside required us to put down a laydown out there and fence it out for safety reasons. And then we have to rebuild the play structure that's out in the front. It's right now in a disassembled condition, and part of it requires a new foundation because the existing foundation had rotted away. So that's included in the $59,000 portion of the change order, which is going to be done in spring. Last but not the least, we owe our architects a fee because they had to do multiple revisions, this is scope that was not shown, they were not supposed to do it. And I believe the fee that they're asking for is extremely reasonable. I worked with Steve to keep it down to a minimum. And even with the additional changes that were brought about in November and December, they have not come back and asked us for additional services for that. It's all built into the number. So that's the first change order that we've asked for it to be reviewed. Any questions on the subject?
Just, Ramesh, thank you for your efforts in negotiating on our behalf and representing us well.
Thank you. So this portion of the work will be complete, as I said, in early spring. We have the subcontractors under contract. Now I want to give you the better news. CIP 20, FY20, which was the 4 projects that we had started, officially ended last week. The last bit of the punch list was completed at Blythe Park, and that's the end of Berglund's contract, essentially. So I think they stayed within the GMP, which was extremely valuable to us because they didn't come back for any additional services, except for this one, which was completely unforeseen. And we managed to get them to do a lot more work that was required in between the schools. We've done a lot more additional work. We fixed a lot of at Central, we fixed the slabs, we fixed walls. All that work was done as part of the GMP. So I believe that we got an additional benefit in this project that we started out with. So the CIP 20, I believe, was a very successful project, and I believe the team should be congratulated for that.
Indeed.
Ramesh, I think some of the other, when you say slabs, are you talking the support structure? I know a lot of the sidewalks have to be repoured as well.
Right, and I'm talking the base contract,
Yeah,
if you recall, along the swimming pool, when we exposed the structure, we found out there was no foundation underneath
Yeah.
it. It had to be completely underpinned. All that was built into the GMP. We used the GMP allowances to finish that work, which if we had gone out and bid it separately, it could have cost us 2 or 3 times that amount. So we luckily managed to draw down from the values. I mean, Berglund was well within the rights to say no, but we had built the allowances, if you recall, in the GMP. When I initially presented the GMP to the board, I said we had created these allowances in there. There was an overtime bucket. There was an allowance for, unseen conditions. We used that money to complete all these works that we saw. I think overall it was a very successful project. It really stabilized a lot of these buildings and brought us there. It also helped, of course, expose the central sprinkler project, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. Okay. The next one is,
You know, so I think we have to take action on, oh, I
Yes.
have my microphone off. We have to take action on the central utilities change order. So we should probably enter that as a board vote on that one first.
Okay, yes, it's good to point that out. Let's see, is there a motion to approve and authorize the attached agreements for central utilities project as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, just thank Ramesh and the architects for projects that have been completed. I'm trying to think about what lesson can be drawn from the central drainage work.
Essentially, we're paying $450,000, as Ramesh said, and we're really getting nothing for it. It wasn't like we had a drainage problem that's being fixed. We're essentially doing work that the WMRD likes us to do for their own reasons, and maybe it'll have a marginal impact on the sewage system in Riverside. But I'm wondering, what is there a lesson we can learn here? Like, just be very careful when you start digging, sort of thing. To maybe think twice before you start digging. Is there any lesson about how to avoid this sort of thing in the future?
absolutely. In fact, I think we brought that up at the facilities committee meeting, because when we plan to do the central Hauser playground project, that's the first thing I brought up, saying that we don't know what's going on underground. Initially the previous project had just done some paving work. I said, before we start this, let's try and understand what's going on underground so that we can walk into that project with eyes open and design a drainage system that will function, meet all the requirements, and it doesn't become a change order. That was part of the process that we learned. It was not as simple. When Lakota did their design, it was very easy for us to say, let's go ahead and implement this. But at that time, we did say stop. Before we plunge into that project, we need to be aware that there's an underground storm drainage issue that needs to be addressed.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion?
Okay.
All right, Kathy, can you call the roll?
Okay, Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi,
Aye.
Mrs. Murphy,
Aye.
Mr. Marhol,
Aye.
Mrs. Kleiber,
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead,
Aye.
and Mr. Hunt.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, the next item is the Hauser Central Fire Protection.
So when we discussed this issue in December, at that time we proposed that we release DLA to go ahead with the schematic portion, concept schematic portion, through design development, and I said that by January, February, I'll present a report and get a better idea of the budget for this particular project. So DLA's engineer, Berg Engineering, went inside Central and Hauser, and they examined the existing system in detail. In fact, even yesterday they were working out at the site, pulling some of the ceiling tiles down to understand how the pipes, because we don't have a very good understanding of the existing drawing. We don't have, this was done 60, 70 years ago. The as-built that we have are pretty dated. So there's good news and bad news. The good news is the Hauser system is a completely separate system which can be left alone. It's a wet pipe system. It's in great condition. Eventually we'll have to do some upgrades to it, in the sense the fire pump has to be replaced. It's reached its lifetime, but it's a wet pipe system, which is good. The central system, which we always knew was a dry system, which had all the problems, yes, it has the issues, but we found that we have a lot more heads, a lot more pipe than what we initially anticipated. So when the drawings were initially submitted to me a week and a half, 2 weeks ago from DLA, we did a detailed analysis of the costs associated with this work. So the building itself of Central is 72,000, 75,000 square feet. If this were a brand new system, I mean, in a standalone new construction, we would expect a fire protection system to cost about $8 a square foot. So let's say that's 72,000 times 8, we're looking at $560,000 as part of a full brand new construction. But in this case, we have to go in and remove the pipe by actually removing the ceiling. In many cases at Central, the ceiling is going to be either acoustical tile, like what you see out here, or plaster. All that has to be rebuilt and put back after you put the new pipe and the new sprinkler heads in. That easily doubles the cost. So we always knew this was going to happen, but the problem is the number of heads that we have to deal with. Each time, each head is going to get replaced out there, except for the ones that we replaced during our construction period. But that was a very limited number of heads that we replaced in our contract with Berglund. So we're looking at, an excess of 800 heads that had to be replaced. There's a lot of costs associated with that. So the budget for this, initially I told you is going to, I gave a ballpark number 2 months ago saying it's about $1 million. But after reviewing the documents that are being generated right now and a conversation that I've had with DLA, gone back and forth with them on multiple issues, I even asked them, like, why aren't we doing 2 fire pumps? I mean, should we have a second backup fire pump? The engineer came back and said, by code, we are only required to put in 1 fire pump. That's great. I mean, I went back and forth trying to get a better understanding as to what's required, how do we future-proof our process out here. Having looked at the numbers, it's right now trending to almost $1.4, $1.5 million. It's almost 500,000 more. Now, I will work with DLA and with the engineer to see what we can do to bring that down. I mean, is there any pipe that we can save for any reason? Is there any good quality pipe that still exists in there? Is there some areas where we could leave the pipe exposed? Because if it's in a staircase, maybe it can be. I'm just going to try and ask those questions to try and bring this price down within reason. Because we should be able to get it between $1 million and $1.5 million, but the fact is we're going to be putting the contractor under tremendous pressure in summer, because in that 3-month period they have not only installed, they could take out the old pipe, and the old heads, put in new pipes. The building can't be occupied during that period. It's not acceptable. It's not a occupiable building, and they have to finish all this work by the end of August. It's a very tight schedule we have. That's why this one really is on a fast track. By next month, we are going to be ready to go to bid, at which time I'll recommend to the board that we do move ahead with the bid. At least let's get the numbers and find out and proceed with it, because there are some items in this project that are long lead time items. The fire pump, it takes almost 3 months, 3.5, 4 months to order. So we need to release the contractor by, say, end of April, early May, so that we have a pump ready to be installed in August. It's important that we go through that process. If the bids come in, lower, fantastic, but I just want to give the board a heads up saying there's a potential of this coming in higher. It's a very difficult set of drawings to do too. I spoke with Ryan about it at DLA saying, how do we explain to the contractor, you have to take the ceiling down, remove it. So we're going to try and create allowances in there. We'll track it either by labor or by days worked. Somehow we're going to figure out how we can try and make this process efficient and accomplish what we set out to. Because we just don't want them to tear out the entire ceiling, because it's going to cost us an arm and a leg to do that.
Perhaps, I know initially you mentioned the possibility of asbestos abatement and additional costs. Do you have an idea if that is necessary? And if so, how much additional costs, or is that included in your estimate?
We have created an allowance in the estimate for environmental abatement. It's not likely for us to run into asbestos, but very good chance of us running into lead paint.
Lead paint, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we have created an allowance in the overall estimate for environmental mitigation and for the hiring of an environmental consultant who would design that. That's built into the number.
Thank you.
And I'm giving you project numbers. I'm not just giving you construction numbers. It's the architect's fee, everyone's fee in there.
Great, thank you.
So, Ramesh, just so I'm clear, when you're designing the system or when the architects are designing the system, the idea is it's not to sort of replicate the system that's there now, it's just to sort of design the most efficient possible system that we could from scratch, given the old system basically is worthless. Is that the idea?
Correct. So the engineer actually will look at the most current codes and how they apply to school buildings, and that's how it's processed. And in fact, there may be locations where we can go with a larger size pipe, for example, and eliminate 2 smaller pipes as the feeders. And we're trying to do that. Yes, absolutely.
So it's a stupid question, I don't know anything about fire sprinklers or anything like that, but like, is it necessary that the pipes are above the ceiling tiles, or could they be below the ceiling tiles? And again, I don't know what the code says, but like, I'm just curious about, because sometimes you go to a building, you do see exposed sprinkler systems, but I don't know exactly how that works.
If you have a finished ceiling, typically the tile is above, the pipe is above. If you don't have a ceiling, yes, you do end up seeing it. But I can let Ryan or Steve answer that question.
I'm sure we anticipate that there will be some exposed pipes. I think as Ramesh said, often the branches, if you've got a drop ceiling, finished ceiling, would be above that ceiling. But we do anticipate that there will be some exposed pipes, just because it's going to be more efficient and cost effective to do it that way.
Right, so I guess my question more was, does it, I imagine it would be much less costly if you didn't worry about sort of hiding the pipes at all, is it possible, I'm just asking this as a question, to have a system where just the pipe is, running down the top, right below the ceiling tiles, so you don't have to, remove all the ceiling. Again, I don't know the answer to that, I'm just curious.
You need a parallel system below?
Right, just a totally new system, leave the old system there and just, unplug it. But I don't know, I'm just asking, I guess my question is, do we have to remove the ceiling, which as Ramesh is saying is adding a lot to the cost, or can we just?
The issue would be that to hang the new pipe, you would have to go back and tie it to the structure. So
Okay.
there would have to be some demolition involved either way.
Okay.
The question is whether it becomes an eyesore. You really don't want, some of the areas the pipes may be low, too low. That's also a possibility. It can be looked at. We can make some field decisions during the construction process. We can take a look at it for sure.
Okay, thank you.
So without, not trying to go into excessive detail on this, but I would have actually thought these acoustical tiles would have made it easier. So I'm just thinking, like, you pop these things out, you pull the pipe out and put it back in. So but I could see plaster or drywall where you're reconfiguring the whole thing, trying to patch it up. I'm just curious, why isn't the acoustical easier, or what's the issue with? Oh, it is easier.
It is absolutely easier. Yeah. But you would have to reconfigure the grid, for example, exactly as how Jeff mentioned. If an old room had, say, 10 heads and the new one has 4, just saying, you would have to reconfigure the layouts.
I gotcha. You're not just going exactly, you're actually redesigning it, I gotcha, okay.
The spaces, codes have changed, the
Yep.
requirements, the hazard requirements are all changed. They have to meet a certain standard now, which is very different from when the system was designed.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that, thank you.
So that's the central sprinkler one. And I think the next one.
Any more questions on the sprinklers? All right, yes, you're right. The next one is the Hollywood Playground.
So the Hollywood Playground, again, this also was a subject that we discussed 2 months ago, and we released the architect to proceed up to design development. We would look at where we stand with the project, because the board is concerned that the costs were rising, we're getting very excessive, and they wanted a commitment that we could rein in the project to within a $350,000 to $400,000 range for just the playground section of it. But I'm happy to report that after multiple iterations with DLA, the latest estimate shows that the project is about $380,000. That includes the playground equipment, and includes the surface that we talked about, and the reconfiguration of the whole space. The architects have also put together the bid package that they planned. We've had this discussion with them. There will be multiple bid portions, because Hollywood also has the playground, the parking lot section that's affected by the addition. So there will be 3 separate bids there. There will be the addition of the Hollywood addition, the multipurpose room. There will be the site work, and there will be the playground. The board can decide which ones they want to proceed with at that stage. Right now, they're all trending within the budgets that we had set out.
So I think the drawings look good to me. I think they looks like a good space for the kids there.
I guess my question is really what, it still seems to me, I appreciate you're trying to keep the cost, in line, but it still seems quite high to me, given that it's a playground for 130 kids. So we're talking about spending $3,000 per kid. I'm just wondering what's driving the cost here. I know that playground equipment is not, is not the bulk of it. And the space is already used as a playground. We're going to put down some mulch and so forth, but what's really driving the cost here, I guess, is my question.
So if you look, I'm not sure if we included the cost breakdown in the board book, but the playground equipment and its installation is about $150,000. We have a civil component to it where we have to introduce new storm structures to remove drain, to keep the field from becoming a pond. We have multiple structures that have to be tied in out there. There's piping that goes in underground. We have to do that. Then we have to reconfigure and level out the site that's there, put down the soft surface membrane that's required. There's a new fence that's got to be built for safety requirements. So it's all, so the number I'm quoting is 387 is once again an all-in number. It includes all the fees, all the requirements in there. It's not just the construction dollars. The construction dollar component of it is a little bit less. Ryan, you want to talk about the design changes that we've made?
I can walk you through a little bit of the design modifications that we made. Starting at the east side of the playground, you got the 2 4-square courts there in colored concrete. We moved to the south. We've got something called the Spinami. We had a difference unity climber structure there previously. We went to that satisfied some of the requests that came out of our visioning workshop to have some spinning elements. So we changed that. It was a lesser price, and we incorporated some climbing elements into the play structure to the west. If you then go to the south, we've got the traditional swings, which are a big hit. So we incorporated those. I think you saw those in the previous design. And then one of the big differences is we looked at this play structure. There's a couple different ways that you can put these together. We worked with our consultant to not take a manufacturer designed structure off the shelf, but look at components and how we might be able to lessen that cost and still use all the same functions that we were looking for. So we've got ADA accessible slide and stairs, the taller twirly slide, and then some climbing and balance features with the overhead loop ladder. So we move over to the west. We have the concerto musical instruments right by the butterfly garden, which are a nice add. And obviously those are accessible as well. And then further on to the west, we've got the balance logs that connect to the Zoom Tracks zip line with the disc seat, which obviously was a request by just about every kid in our visioning workshop. So all of those items helped bring the cost down. As Ramesh talked about, the surfacing was a cost reduction as well. And then it still leaves, further to the west and the south, a large open grass area for playing and for a gaga pit.
I think we're meeting all the goals that had been set out by the board, which was not just the pricing, but to try and make it a successful, functioning playground. So as Ryan described it, we are putting all the major elements in the design, and we've cut back on the area that we're working within. If you remember, initially we were planning to square off the site. We're not doing that anymore. We're maintaining the original run the way it was held. And the fences are limited. We've switched the workout between 2 sections. It'll all be bid, and the board can make a decision to award A, B, or C, any combination of the whole thing, if you feel the cost is too high. They're giving you options. That's the most important thing.
Ramesh, can you explain how the site work can be done without, or can be pulled out of the other two?
The site work which we are talking about associated with the multi-purpose room, typically has to go in with the multipurpose room addition that we're building. So those two are tied, but the
Okay.
board may decide that it's coming too high and we only want to do the play lot. We can do
Okay.
that, yes.
Thank you for that clarification.
That's the play lot at Hollywood.
Okay. Yeah.
So one quick thing, I'm kind of thinking about your comment, Jeff, and just like a different way to break that down possibly. Like, the equipment is essentially gonna be the same, I think. So we got a fence here that wasn't existing before, that's gonna add cost into it and everything. But is it fair to say that like the site prep, like the storms, the drainage and all that is one of the biggest drivers? And I'm almost trying to look at it as overhead versus
It's
optional
the biggest
costs.
driver. I think it's a necessary driver. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
point building this and leaving it as a pond, 8 months of the year if there's rain. You have to drain the site, so
Right.
that I think is a requirement. But one of the major changes we made is we switched from the soft surface rubber membrane, we went to wood chips. So we've reduced that cost tremendously. It went
Yeah.
from $22 a square foot down to $4.50 a square foot.
But I think I guess what I'm trying to do in my head is, okay, we had the similar stuff here.
Yeah.
And that drainage cost is probably not gonna change whether you have 500 kids or 100 kids. So it's kind of an overhead cost that's just gonna go
Correct.
into it. And
Correct.
so this is gonna feel a lot more expensive, but it's not necessarily the playground. It's everything else that has to be done to build it.
Prepping the land.
Yeah.
And that's why I have a hard time thinking of it as in cost per child, because of that, because,
Is the playground that we have at Hollywood now in this field that's sort of included in the fence, has there been a drainage problem there historically? Because I'm not aware of one, but.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
From what I-
Speaking from personal experience, when it rains, it's essentially a little pond in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen it completely underwater after
Yeah.
regular rain.
Okay, I've never noticed it.
I think it looks great though. I love the addition of the fence, just makes it feel like it's just like
It ties
so
it
much
together.
bigger than what the
Yeah.
kids have right
Right,
now,
yeah.
just allowing that room to run and like that beautiful tree in the middle, I think it's great.
Any, not to put you on the spot, but as we're talking about digging into the ground and unknowns, any potential, or I guess any, I don't know how to ask this question, any concerns we have about sticking backhoe in the ground?
Like
over
the
here?
lesson
Yeah, from the
we should be
lessons,
taking,
yeah.
right.
Hollywood School's a lot newer than Central. The Hollywood House, that's another question.
I believe, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, the village of Brookfield is a little bit different than Riverside.
Okay.
A lot more generous in certain aspects.
Okay,
And we have a full survey that is done, and we're trying to keep ourselves limited to exactly where we are. We're not trying to
Yeah.
rework the whole
Right.
school site.
okay.
And we do have a contingency included in this number. It's not just an exact number. I always build some fat that we probably will have to end up using, so there's numbers in there.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Next item is the Hollywood multipurpose room.
That's the one that we also asked DLA to proceed, that in case we decide to go out to bid, it's going to be pulled out from the original documents, retouched up to meet the latest codes, and bid as a separate document. So we're in good shape with that too. I mean, I talked to Steve about this a few weeks ago, and Steve, I think we are making good progress on that, correct?
Yes, we are.
That's what I thought. So we'll be ready to go out to bid along with the play lot and the central sprinklers all together, and we'll be able to make a decision as to which ones we want to award.
That is, we're anticipating costs will go up significantly from where they were the last time, correct?
This is a discussion I'm going to sit down with DLA to have as to how do we package this together so that we can get some efficiencies of scale. You know, if we do the Hollywood project, I think the central sprinklers has to be a standalone because it's so, it's so concentrated in one or two trades I think we keep that one as it is. But there are other elements that we can discuss. You know, Hollywood by itself, I think is about, you know, if we can keep it within 1.5 to 1.8 million, including the multi-purpose room and all the site packages, and decide how we award it. Let's see how it works out and how we can package it.
All right, and then the last item is the Hauser Central Campus.
So this one I brought up to Martha and Jim a few weeks ago. I'm working with Chicago Public Schools right now on 5 play lots, 5 play fields, you know. And I've been educating myself on what's happening, what new technology is available, how we can try and keep costs down. And in their case, they just give you, you know, you have $1 million, you spend it, that's it. You're not getting 1.1, you're not getting 1.5 or 2, you're getting 1. So I discussed this with Martha, saying that I got a lot of new ideas that I would like to share with the board eventually, but I think I'll start with discussing this with the facilities committee at the next one. So on underground storm drainage, it's one of the most expensive elements, and it's something that you can spend a lot of money on, you don't see it. It's underground, it's a storm detention tank, for example. And precast tanks that typically are very expensive because of the excavation that's required. So I had spoken with a couple of vendors about this. There are storm drainage structures, are newer ones that are made of plastic, for example, which are faster, easier, cheaper to install. And they asked me to go and take a look at an installation actually close to where I used to live in Glencoe. And I initially estimated that that portion of the work at close to 800 to 900,000. I met with the contractor and he told me that he installed it for 350. So, you know, there's new technologies, new things that we're learning, and he explained to us how it doesn't need to go as deep in the excavation process and whatnot. So these are things that I think we should discuss in facilities and make decisions for next year's program at Central and Hauser. And I think we should be able to bring that number down so there's no more sticker shock. It's not a $10 million project. Maybe, you know, we do the first phase for a more manageable number if the board decides to do so. But I thought I would share those ideas at the next facilities committee meeting. I told Martha I should just bring it up to the board so that it's kept on our radar. We know we're still talking about it.
Yeah, that's great that you're doing that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that sounds super promising. So, I look forward to hearing about it.
I agree. Well, maybe not, I don't know. With it being new, does that cause issues with getting it approved?
Oh, no. I mean,
No,
this
okay.
is, all these projects require MWRD approval.
Yeah.
And
Oh, okay.
they would be
All right.
approved.
Okay.
always. I mean, CPS will never go with anything new.
Oh, that's a
They're-
good point. Yeah, true.
So I have 5 projects. I mean, I'm keeping a close eye on the bids on that because I'm the financial controller for that project. So I'm watching to see how the bids come in, because how is it different from the suburbs? Because of the union rules and requirements in city. What about hauling, disposal of soils? There are all sorts of strange rules that you run to Chicago Public Schools. So I'm really monitoring the costs for that. The bids are due in about 2.5 months. I'll keep an eye on that to see how we can run our project based on that. But the Glencoe project was a real eye-opener to me, because I'd seen that construction and I thought it was about close to 900,000 to $1 million, and he told me $350,000 installed. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
All right, yes, that's it.
One last easy question for Martha. Is on the Hollywood playground, is that a final rendering, or were we going to go try to do another round of playgrounds, or I don't know what if anything would change, if that's even necessary, but we had kind of talked about that, so I didn't know
Yeah.
what we were thinking.
We had talked about reconvening the playground committee, and then I know this process has been cumbersome with the village approvals, the questions that I know the board has had. So I think before, you know, assuming we move forward, that we would probably reconvene the committee just to say, right, this is the playground design that we selected, that we preferred. It's been a long time now since we all met. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think what part of this process is that since we've made good progress on the costs and the designs for Hollywood and the playground, we should let DLA proceed to the next stage to get the documents ready for bid. That will be the next step. the decision has to be made in the next month. It's not a decision today. I'm just trying to give you a heads up that it's going to come up in the next 30 days.
So Ramesh, can you kind of maybe give us a timeline thinking about board meeting dates? So we meet on March 3rd, March 17th, March 3rd, it's committee of the whole, you know, if
Right. I
we
think
wouldn't
the
be
March
making
3rd
decisions
meet-
then.
Right. I think the March 3rd meeting, we should cut DLA loose on the design aspect of the next stage of the Hollywood playground. Because we had told them that based on where we stand today, we'll make that decision so that they can proceed with the construction documents for that playground. That's the March 3rd, so that we're ready to go out to bid by end of March, April. We need to get that process rolling.
So we're really kind of asking the board for a comfort level with moving to that next phase. There's no
Correct.
formal action required, but
Correct.
just
There's
a.
nothing required today. It's just saying that I believe we've met the requirements the board set out to, that they had asked us to do in December, and saying that in the next 30 days, we have to make the decision whether we're not going to do the job or we're going to proceed. Otherwise, we'll get time constrained.
And that's for both playground and multipurpose room.
Correct. I mean, yes. The whole,
That just
the whole
broke
package.
down, yeah.
Yes. Not the central sprinklers, that we're proceeding with because we have to move
Yeah.
ahead. So.
So I guess then, do we even have enough time then for a reconvening of the playground committee?
I think to give it a sense of approval, I mean, this really does follow the design they came up
Right.
with, both the children in focus groups as well as the formal committee that was the teachers and some parents, people from the HCA.
Right, I think Ryan did mention that pretty much everything
Yeah.
in the list
Yeah.
was included in the design.
Yeah, and that's what I'm wondering, like, it has been a while since we met, but I'd have to go back and do a direct comparison. It doesn't look tremendously different, so.
No, from what we saw before, Ryan and Steve have presented a playground design that does capture the elements that the kids and adults wanted. The key being the zip line. We've got some different equipment out there, which is good. It's a little bit different from Ames, but it addresses the basic needs. I mean, there's only so much variation that we're going to have in a playground design. I think it is appropriate to move forward at this point.
Yeah, I do too. In terms of the playground committee, I don't know if it's a matter of just reaching out and showing them,
If I recall, that's what we did with Ames. We convened everybody on Zoom kind of just before we were ready to go out to build it and just said, this is what people picked, this is what it's going to look like. Is everybody good with it? It was a bit more of a thumbs up kind of thing than anything else. I think what's hard is it's been so long since we met, and then we're not using the playgrounds because of the structure of our school day, So I think even just the feedback we had from children and staff, it hasn't changed, but it's just not front of mind, I think, for people right now, which is unfortunate.
And Martha, I think, and to Wesley, reconvening and saying, here's what we're talking about, do you have any great concerns, and leaving it at that, and looking for that affirmation more than let's discuss every playground piece of equipment. We don't need to be going there.
Yeah.
And we don't need to go there because DLA did capture the intent.
All right, Ramesh, thank you. Okay, next is the new business discussion. First item listed, the strategic planning update for the SWOT analysis. Absolutely.
So we just finished our third data retreat, which produced the SWOT analysis documents that are in your book here, both the copy of the full. So again, just a quick recap. We had 6 groups of individuals, so 6 tables that met in a breakout session on Zoom, and Perry from CEC walked us through, gave everybody the definitions of a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, a threat. And all this stuff is posted out on the website in a very clear to find space under the strategic planning. Everything's really broken down in there too. So for anybody that's interested, I would recommend starting with the SWOT analysis over the SWOT, let me see. They're both kind of called the same thing. One of them's a full-blown and one of them's a one-pager. The one-pager does a really nice job of summarizing all the different comments, the common themes that were in here. The full-blown version has all the comments plus the recaps on all the bottom of them. So I think most of the teams, in my opinion, seem to have generally same direction or similar concerns worded in different ways, but there were clearly some pretty easy to pick out pockets. I think it's a lot of stuff that we've kind of already talked about, either over time or new things that have popped up. So I was kind of pleased that it does kind of already seem in a general alignment of things that we're already talking about. There's some additional things in here too, but that feels pretty good that so far it doesn't seem like we're in two completely different worlds that we're trying to blend together for the next 5 years in this. And then let's see, next steps is we move into 3 2-hour sessions for the vision retreat that are coming up. We've got 2 of those next week. And we do have I think we're calling it an editing committee or something like that, where we are asking a group of individuals that were part of this team, a smaller part, to really go through here and edit this to say, did we miss anything big? Did we misinterpret anything? But also and maybe you could probably speak to this a little bit more clear since you work with Perry, but like reaching out for more community input as well to make sure that we're capturing as much opinion perspective as we can.
What CEC recommends is that, like, after the board has had a chance to look at this, I mean, Dan and Wesley have been in these planning groups, would be to send it out to the full community, the full parent community, and just ask for feedback. Does this, are these the strengths that you also see in the district? If you were to identify the greatest strength or 2 greatest strengths, what would they be, similar to the weaknesses, opportunities, or threats? So kind of a survey format, but that's an opportunity to really engage a much larger stakeholder group and bring that feedback back to the strategic plan team.
And even potentially, I don't know if we can do this, but potentially even trying to get non-school community members to try to provide some feedback as well, just a totally different perspective of not being involved with this and reading it, going, are there any major concerns? Are there any major gaps? Things like that. So just trying to get as many perspectives as we can for our next 5-year journey through this. Dan, I'll flip it over to you, and then the only thing I was going to ask was same thing from you, got any major obstacles or opinions that seem to be missed or anything like that, but what's your perspective of how this last session went?
Oh, yeah, I'm in agreement. I think it's kind of raw data, I think, was the team analysis. There's a lot there, but it is pretty similar, and I agree with the groupings as they came out. I know you had some editing suggestions, and I think they were valid. So I'm glad we had those included to the version that's posted. I think if anything, I do like the idea of putting it out there for a further community survey. I think from the sessions I've been in or the groups that I'm in, I think I'm the only parent there, and so it would be good to get some more input from the outside community, I think, and other stakeholders. It's definitely a great idea to try to include people who may not necessarily have kids in the school system. We'll see to what degree we can get that done. But overall, I've been impressed with the process so far. I like the group that I'm in. We're very talkative. We're people getting out a lot of great ideas. And from what you can see if you look at the raw data side, there's a lot of other groups out there, producing coming up with similar ideas. So that can be a good or a bad thing, I guess. From the meetings that we're in, we're kind of all similar mind. We have a lot of similar concerns. And so that would be something to hear back from the community or from the board as well. Are we missing anything?
I think getting those other, disasters too, and getting their opinion is essential. I don't even think it's not just a bonus. I think it's essential. And it was very useful the last time we did that, and because they might be thinking of something that we never thought as parents. We're so deep in. I think that's a wonderful idea, whether they're editing or however you want to include them. But would really appreciate. I think the community would appreciate that, and it's just a necessary waiting. We talk about including everyone in our classrooms. It's the same thing for our community, and I really like that idea. So, thanks for suggesting that.
I think it's more of a logistical have.
Yeah. Oh, I totally get that. That's up to you guys.
Yeah. CEC has some ideas that they're going to share with me tomorrow morning. I have a meeting actually. So
solve that for you. But I like the idea.
The mail a copy of this to everybody.
I mean, certainly engaging the non-school community is always really challenging,
Yeah.
but always a great idea. Maybe working with the villages, they would have some way to
Oh,
do
yeah.
some outreach,
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe the more just on the process overall. I think Perry's been great in my opinion. Like he's just a good facilitator. He's I don't mean this in a bad way. He's slow. Like he speaks intentionally. He makes it clear. Like everybody's following along. He's very clear with what the expectations are. He's extremely organized. I I do a tremendous. All I do is virtual meetings, and this is this is one of the most well organized virtual meeting cadence sessions I think I've been a part of in a long time. So I think he's doing a great job just facilitating the whole thing.
It goes well, definitely. I mean, I think that splitting these up, it looks daunting on the calendar, seeing the number of engagements that we have. I think it works better that way than having a whole bunch of people in for 2 days straight or whatever the original schedule is. I can think back to the previous strategic planning the district had, 5 years ago or so, and similar in concept, but I think basically it was like 2 sessions. We came up with one. You were assigned to one group. I think I was in the personnel group, which was great as far as it goes, but if your interests are more than personnel, you kind of, you don't really get a say in those other groups and how they worked out. So I'm glad that everybody gets a say on every topic, and then we all bring it back together. And it is good to see as well when you're looking at the what the other groups are coming up with. Of hey, yep, people are of a similar mind. We should be able to come up with good actionable plans because we have in general good agreement amongst people who have come together for this on what are the weaknesses, what are the strengths, what are the opportunities. So. It's definitely been a very good use of time, although we definitely have a number of sessions coming ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Mark how it was for the staff, because I know I've been on some of those committee meetings where you meet at 8 and you're done at 2 or 3, and by the end, you're kind of in a daze, but it was necessary because of the teacher, participation too, and I was wondering, are they responding well to the schedule with the...
Yep, we're getting good feedback. So we're doing it from 4 to 6 p.m. on
Yeah.
Zoom,
That's not
and I
too
think a
bad.
lot of staff even hurry home and engage from home, and so I think even that doesn't feel quite as daunting as I'm going to stay in my classroom till 6 o'clock at night. There are some that are from their classroom, I can tell, but yeah, I think the feedback we've had is it's good. It's I think they feel like they're giving a lot of input and very much part of the process, as we certainly wanted them to be.
Yeah, it's a lot of hours, I know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anything to keep your attention fresh is good.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. Any other questions?
No, I just look forward to how you narrow all that raw data, so, yeah. That's the hard part, I think.
I gotta say, it feels like you guys are enjoying it, which is really I'm so two people involved. As you're talking about it, you look so excited, and that's
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
I mean, I'm kind of
So we should change our tone to make it sound more like drudgery?
No, it's like, it's reaffirming that, yeah, we've got the right people on the staff.
Well, I did like Perry compared, we had, not that the others weren't great, the presenters for the different companies we were going to use, but I thought he was very engaging for what we heard, yeah. Yeah.
He clearly does. And
Yes. I agree.
I love this type of stuff. I mean, if you don't have a good, well-structured plan, then it doesn't really matter what you do. You're probably not going to win. So this stuff is critically important especially for like massive organization or large organization like this. So, yeah.
Well, and I would say, I mean, it's similar. The structure of it is similar to what we had 5 years ago. It just seems to be more in depth, and again, it gives us a chance for everybody to participate in multiple areas and have their voice heard on any of their concerns, not necessarily limiting them to one area or another.
I apologize, I have to leave for a medical emergency for my mom, so I'm sorry that I'm missing part of it, but I have to go.
Okay.
Sorry to leave.
Sorry, Cher.
It's okay.
It doesn't look like you're gonna be missing.
No, I didn't, I
Yeah,
thought that
we
if
voted
we
on
talk
everything
about
tonight.
TRS or I feel bad if Jim is gonna, miss, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. No worries. Okay, then the next item is the discussion regarding potential child care agreement with Brookfield.
This is brief tonight. Just really wanted some direction from the board. The Village of Brookfield, as you recall, had reached out back in the summer about a possible childcare before and after school arrangement, specifically at Hollywood School. And at that point, there was so much going on. I mean, on one hand, we were very much concerned that families weren't going to have childcare that they needed with our AM/PM split program. What we came to learn then later too is that not many families are doing before and after care this year, whether it's families who've just been able to manage flexible work schedules or whatever. But assuming we're back to somewhat normal times, hopefully next year, Brookfield is still very interested in the possibility of being a child care provider. I sort of enter into this one a bit carefully, not entering into any formal agreement, but asking the board, would you want to even consider this? Would you want the Village of Brookfield before and after care program to come and present directly to the board? Would you rather that they present to an administrative team and a recommendation comes to you? Ultimately, the board action would be an intergovernmental agreement for this kind of work. But I know that having two child care providers historically for the district was good at one time and challenging at another. So I want to be very careful. Again, Riverside Parks and Rec is doing a nice job with our before and after care. Again, speaking more, they're doing a nice job now, but they are seeing very few kids. But is this something that the board wants to even consider? And if so, how would you want to consider it in terms of process?
I personally would feel that a presentation to the administration and a recommendation is more than appropriate. It's not like we're vetting several vendors at this moment. I think I'm not in that area. I don't have children at Hollywood, so maybe David would have more. But maybe even like getting feedback from parents and the community that could be helpful. I mean,
I think presenting to the administration is fine, coming back with a recommendation. I guess from a board's perspective, I'm really not interested in having two providers. I think that's going to cause possible conflicts. I mean, in perception of like, okay, well, why is Brookfield charging this, or why is Riverside charging this? One's more, one's less, one's getting something else, somebody's not getting what they want. I think we need to just stick with one provider. I think it's a good idea to look at our options and take a look and see what Brookfield will offer, but I don't want to like have a Brookfield and a Riverside option. I just want one option.
I do agree with what both Linda said and David said, which is, if you want to talk to them at the administrative level, that's fine. But there's a lot to be said for simplicity. It will be one more agreement, one more set of discussions, one more set of possibilities for, as David said, they're doing this over here, and what are we gaining for that? So unless there's some compelling reasons, I would sort of personally not be terribly enthusiastic about it.
I'm actually going to push against the grain and say I'm okay with two separate organizations. We're looking at two different locations. If Brookfield's case is compelling, then it's worth exploring. Ultimately, we may decide that we don't want to go that direction, but I think you should hear what they have to say. And pricing might be different. And that's no different than going between two separate childcare providers. Everybody offers something different, and in theory, pricing should be reflective of the services they offer. Yes, there's the potential for conflict or comparisons, but if the Brookfield presentation is compelling and it seems to be worth moving forward with, then that's acceptable, at least in my mind.
I think everyone should always keep their options open when it comes to paying for their services. So I don't think it ever hurts to talk whether we go forward with it or not. Without belaboring it too much, I think there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle that would need to be thought about. I think if they're going to come in and just say this is a Hollywood-only solution, that might be a little bit difficult for me to figure that out. I also don't know if they could have a full Riverside solution, so I guess I don't know that we need a full board presentation. I think I agree with I think you guys can make a sound decision on kind of where we're at and what solutions we would probably approve or would want for our community. So I think it's worth moving forward and thinking about it, but hopefully they come with more than just a one school type idea behind it and try to split it out, because I think I agree with Joel that, yeah, maybe we go that option and we've got two options and that's just how it is. That's how things work, but I kind of agree with the other comment too about having it just creates more headaches for us in the community, so is it really worth it?
If I can get that on, there is one condition, I didn't know, I've heard this, and I don't know how much validity there is to it, but I guess if we do go with Brookfield, or if Brookfield's considered, and the same thing with Riverside, I know Riverside doesn't do this, but at least I don't believe they do, is that the costs have to be the same regardless what town you live in. I mean, for the programs, that's like a non-negotiable for me. That regardless where you live, the price is the same.
Well, I'm going to reach back to recent history and thinking back on all the emails that I had to respond to when we denied it before. I think there definitely is a big community interest there. Now, I can't say that it's universal, but there definitely were a lot of folks who were interested and were quite disappointed with us when we didn't provide it as an option, which is all the more interesting when Martha's saying that not many people in any of the schools are really taking us up on it this year. I do think that one of the big appealing factors in Brookfield was that they were cheaper, or at least they had the impression, they gave the impression to the folks in that area that they were cheaper. I definitely, would be okay with a presentation to the administration and coming back with a recommendation. It seems to me that there is a big community interest there. It also seems to me that we kind of misstepped when we denied giving Brookfield residents what a lot of Brookfield residents seem to want and wanted very vocally. I would not want to make that similar mistake again. But that's my impression.
Yeah, now that we actually have time to think through this, I think
True.
it's good for the administration to take that on and think through the process and the plan. Because I think the last time we had this conversation was while we were trying to roll out school during a pandemic, so that was
Very true.
You were trying to make a decision quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you. This is exactly the direction I need, and what I hear is that we would put together an administrative team to look at some options. In terms of the costs, we don't drive the cost of their program, so I think you would potentially be looking at two different costs, and that would be something that the board would either have to be comfortable with or not comfortable with. And certainly I think it would be just for Hollywood. Because I don't know that there's a goal to undo anything from Riverside, and again, being part of the decision that was made back a couple of years ago, the idea was some preference for working with a village partner. And so I think that's what raises this kind of complexity about Hollywood sits in the village of Brookfield, and yet it's partially Riverside and partially Brookfield community members that attend Hollywood. So,
right. And Martha, I can, for me, and I live in the Hollywood, like in Riverside in the Hollywood section, it has to be open to all the schools. I mean, we can't just have it for Hollywood.
But it would be at Hollywood's location.
And that's, I mean, but people in Riverside want to go to, I mean, if we had a two option, let's say.
But how would they get there?
Well,
so we're talking about the before and after care.
Right, no, I understand that,
Okay.
and we would have to work that out, but I don't want this to just be strictly a Hollywood option. I mean, I don't think it's right to the rest of the community.
Well, why don't we let the administrative team
Yes.
sort it
Yeah,
out and then
exactly.
come
Yeah.
back
No,
to
but I
Yeah.
just want that to be. I'd like that to at least be discussed. And if they can't do it, why can't they do it?
And I guess I say just Hollywood, it's the Hollywood location. And yeah, would a family want a before and after care program that's not at their child's school? I don't know, maybe for a different price they would. So I don't want to answer that question in advance, but
Right.
certainly adds another layer of complexity.
I think complexity is really important to think about because
this after-school care, you know, it's nice, but it's not our core mission.
Right.
And if you're spending hours a day trying to figure out, you know, well, do they go here? Do we use this provider for very marginal differences? It is a distraction from other things you could be doing, and you and the others have. So I do think that has to weigh in the calculation.
And if we do that, we have the same issue with Ames with North Riverside too. So that could open up a whole other, like a third thing. So that's why I'm kind of thinking that this is probably not going to be a one-time, you know, it's probably going to be an iterative process to see really what is actually feasible. But I think it's at least worth having the starter conversation to see and go from there.
It's worth having that conversation. I guess what would be concerned about is there's definitely a perception in the Hollywood community that Riverside folks are always telling them what to do, and I guess I wouldn't want to be a part of that.
Well, I mean, I guess, but the thing is, it's a perception.
It is a perception.
It's not a reality, and we need to.
Well, in this case, last year it kind of was, in that there were a lot of people that wanted that option for Brookfield Parks and Rec, and we specifically voted not to give it to them.
I understand that. I voted not to give it to them too. So, I mean, but
Well, it was a compelling argument for simplicity at the time, particularly when everything was going crazy.
right now, and I guess the thing is, I mean, let's see what Brookfield has to offer. But I just, I don't want to be. I mean, to Wesley's point, I mean, if we open up this to like Brookfield to Hollywood, then we're looking at like possibly North Riverside for Ames. I mean, I don't. We should not be doing it because then we're going to be dealing with 3 different agreements, 3 different price structures, 3 different offerings.
Well, I don't know that we've ever heard of a proposition from North Riverside.
No, but it might open the door for it.
Right, I mean,
Right.
you know, what's different here is Brookfield came to us with this request to be considered. When I first started here, I went and visited all 3 Parks and Rec programs, and North Riverside was not interested in doing before and after care. I mean, it doesn't mean that they're not still. That was, you know, a number of years ago now. But you raise a good point.
Yeah. I think your team can figure that out, but to Jeff's point, like, it is not, like, I don't want this to be like, you know, we have a lot of bigger things to be handling at this moment, so I don't want it to
Very
be
true.
like
Yeah.
taking up much of your time.
Yeah, and I appreciate that too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All right. Next item is the Illinois TRS Supplemental Savings Plan.
So Jim has a memo on this, and Jim, if you want to share a little bit, this is interesting. It's a TRS supplemental savings plan that we're required to participate in and requires board approval. So we wanted to bring it forward now for potential action at the March meeting.
Right, there's, they're offering their own 457, and it came out of an amendment to the Illinois Pension Code, so it's, excuse me, it's required. I just wanted to share with the board all the information I had so far, and they're asking for it to be approved by next month, so we can upload it by the end of March. But any questions I can try and answer tonight, or research for next month?
Is a 457B plan somewhat comparable to like what most people would know as a 401K?
Right, except for schools, or for, so we use a 403B and a 457, so.
And Jim, to be clear, because we are part of TRS, we are required to offer this plan.
Because of TRS, I'm sorry.
Because of our participation in TRS, and TRS is requiring us to do this, yes?
We have to offer the plan, but there's other places that our employees can put their money. There's different companies like Fidelity and Vanguard and that kind of thing.
Okay.
So Jim, I just want so I can understand this. If someone participates in this plan, then they don't participate in the pension, correct? I mean, obviously, if you're
This is in addition to the pension.
this is in addition. Okay. Because I know some state bodies give this as an option versus the pension. You have one or the other, not both. And so I didn't know if that was the same case.
I think that all the certified employees have to participate in
Okay.
TRS. When you retire, you might have the option of choosing a lump sum, which may not be there for free compared to a lifetime pension.
Okay.
We have to figure out how long we can live.
But then-
As I understand it, it's basically, this is just an additional option, retirement option for employees. It's all their own money. It doesn't cost us anything, so like, it's required, so it's really not even an issue in any sense, right? There's no decision to be made
Feels like
here.
board action is just kind of a,
Right, just formality.
yeah.
There's a similar one with IMRF already in place, so if someone has, getting closer to retirement, wants to put more in than their pension, that's a good place to do it.
So another one of those things we're required to talk about, but we have no control over.
Exactly, I was just gonna say, the conversation it's required, we have to offer it, we now know we're gonna be offering it, and we're gonna vote on it next year.
And if we
So
all
why do we
vote
even need to
no,
vote on
what
it?
happens?
That's what I'm
I
saying,
guess
like,
that's my
why do we need to
question.
vote on it, because it's written in the process.
That's how it goes, yes.
And what would happen if we all voted no?
See, I was actually wondering, I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what I was
That's
thinking.
what David wants to do.
It's like-
There actually are other topics where we could vote, no. I would be much more tempted to vote no. This seems like a good idea, actually.
Yeah, I agree, it just is one of those like, what, why are, okay, yeah.
I think it's to make sure we're aware of it.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, there's no more conversation on it, right?
Right.
We're good.
You can talk policy now if you want.
Sure.
Well, all right, if we are done on TRS supplemental savings, the next item on the agenda is second public comment and response.
We have had two additional comments. and
Okay.
An email to you.
Okay.
Terry Hickey and Rory Dominic.
All right, I will read them out here. This first one is from Terry Hickey. Good evening, D96 board members and administration. As a Hauser parent, thank you for listening and improving upon the current learning model at Hauser. The model to increase in-person learning at Hauser is significant and exciting progress for our students. We would like to commend our administrators and our teachers for the creativity and thoughtful planning that allowed us to have a hybrid model from day one and to extend to 4 days come March. They have risen to the occasion of hybrid, and everyone has done their best in these challenging circumstances, but it is no substitute for the value of in-person learning. We hope we can continue to monitor, collaborate, and enhance our plans based on the COVID-19 numbers and vaccination of more of our teachers. In a year during which they have missed so much, it is never too late to add to the academic and social engagement of our students with an ultimate goal of returning to full-time. We have heard a survey might be in the works, and what a great idea to help inform continued planning. Thank you for your continued efforts on behalf of our students and teachers. Kind regards, Matt and Terry Hickey. All right, and the second one is from Rory Dominic. Good evening, D96 board members and administration. Thank you all for the continued efforts to improve upon our current learning models during a pandemic. I recognize this has been no simple task, and it's an ever-evolving process. I appreciate the recent quick response to improve upon learning opportunities at Hauser, and I am looking forward to hearing more about the increase in classroom time and social or sport opportunities for the students. I would like to take a minute to remind us all, teachers are truly essential workers and should be treated as such. I hope we will hear about more opportunities for D96 to help our teachers get vaccinated. Teachers are essential to growing young minds, preparing our students for bright futures, and at this point, most of all, for giving our children hope. For giving our children a reason to wake up in the morning, a reason to be excited, a reason to ask questions, a reason to engage. Teachers, you are essential workers. Teachers, you do save lives. Teachers, you do change lives. Thank you to the D96 teachers for taking a daunting task and making it work as best as you could. The reality today is many kids are isolated. They are alone, they are sad, and we are teetering on a depression pandemic. It's now time to return to full-day in-person learning. I understand every single person has a different set of circumstances and a different viewpoint on how school in a pandemic should be handled and what level of risk they are willing to take on. This is why a survey is essential at this time, and for those who are willing to return to a robust in-person learning program, the opportunity should be provided. Nearly a year later, there are many learnings, and it's time to get our kids engaged, learning and growing in person for the remainder of this school year. Thank you for all your time and efforts. Sincerely, Rory Dominic. All right. And I'll switch back to our agenda here. So next, our future meeting dates. Next meeting will be March 3rd, 2021, Committee of the Whole meeting, 7 p.m. at Ames School, multipurpose room. And then March 17th, 2021, regular business meeting, 7 p.m. in the multipurpose room at Ames. The board will enter into closed session at 6:30 p.m. if necessary, and return to open session at 7. And if there is nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.